Tube. This is the project of the day. Got an 02 Ford Mustang. Swapping out the automatic transmission for a manual T5. There is the pile of parts. All of these were sourced from the junkyard. Got your T5, tree mech, bell housing. That's a used clutch and pressure plate and a used flywheel. They will be going on just to keep this budget as cheap as possible. That clutch and the flywheel will be swapped out eventually for a better one, sourced from Rock Auto. I think it's only like $130 for a new flywheel and clutch. First and foremost, disconnect that negative battery terminal, mostly because you're pulling the starter out. And you don't want that bugger sparking and welding itself to the frame when you pull it out. Here's the automatic transmission that's come out so far. This was a party getting him out. It took me about 6 hours on the ground. There's your shifter assembly. Basically just bolts. Pull your center console, 4 bolts, and a couple of connections. Pull out on that. Here's the drive line. Basically not an entirely difficult process. I'm doing it on the ground. Not exactly fun to do it on the ground, but it is doable. I've got this thing sitting on jack stands about a foot off the ground, as you can see. Let's get underneath here. So as you can see, my tires are barely off the ground. Got this thing on jack stands under the frame rail and under the rear axle on both sides. There's the exhaust system. That was a fight to get out, mostly because I cut out the connection between the rear exhaust and the catalytic converter assembly. So I had to take my Sawzall and cut that bad boy off of there. So I'm gonna have to go over to my brother's house later today once I get this all put back together and weld it all back up. Normally you won't have to fight with that, but I had to. So pulling it out is just like pulling any other transmission out. You've got torque converter bolts, flywheel bolts. You have transmission cooler lines that have to get disconnected, and those are going to puke fluid everywhere. So I have a pan ready for that. Basically, I'm just going to be going over a couple of tricks for you guys. I didn't want to go into a whole in-depth video, mostly because it would take my process from a 3-day project into about a 10-day project if I filmed every bolt coming out. The hardest ones to get out were the bell housing bolts, the upper ones up there. And there is a trick to get those out. What you want to do is disconnect the rear transmission mount. It sits right here. There. 4 bolts, pull those out. And then let the transmission hang. You want to kind of have it on a jack. I used floor jack for the process. Would not recommend that. Kind of a dangerous way. That transmission kind of, when it finally comes out, it's going straight to the floor, and you better not be under it or you're going to get squished. Hopefully you'll live, but I was able to use it. It went straight to the floor, but it seems to be intact, but it doesn't really matter to me because that thing is, I'm either going to sell it or it's going to the junkyard. Everything's fine with it. It still operates, drives beautifully, shifts great. I was just sick of an automatic. So, in order to get out those top bolts, drop that transmission mount, like I was saying, let the transmission hang. It's going to shift everything back. Even the engine's going to pick up a bit as the weight is put on it from the transmission. So, what you can use is a number of extensions linked together to get up to that. However, they do make a tool for this. it is basically just one solid piece extension, which I've got here, 1/2 inch. It is about 2.5 feet long, and then I've got a 1/2 inch wobbly socket, which makes life super easy. So all you have to do once you drop that trans down is reach up above it with the extension, and this will put you all the way back behind the transmission so you're free and clear. Then you can crack those loose, take them out, and then wiggle your transmission out of there. Again, I would not recommend doing this with a floor jack like I did. I couldn't figure out a better way to do it on the ground. Wasn't able to do it at the shop where I work, just because they won't let me there on Saturdays and Sundays to work on stuff, and I didn't want to tie up a hoist if it ended up taking longer into Monday or Tuesday or even next week. And I knew they wouldn't be happy about it, and I wouldn't be able to work if I had my Mustang on my lift. Another trick for this, to get out these flywheel bolts, usually you have to put a ratchet and a socket on the front of the harmonic balancer to hold it in place while you turn these, or otherwise the engine's just going to spin. A trick that I've found, and you have to be careful with this, is because there can be sensors behind this flex plate, is to stick a bolt through one of the holes that will bite onto the back of the engine. You got to be careful with this, because if you apply too much pressure, if it's an aluminum block, there is the risk of breaking it. But this will hold it in place just enough for you to crack it loose and to retorque down those bolts. A better way would be to use the ratchet, but seeing as I don't have a second person to hold it for me, and I don't have much room there to lay underneath of it and hold on to both of it and apply enough torque, this is where it ended up. I hope this helps you guys out a little bit. This is an 02 Mustang swapping from an automatic, the 4R70W, to a Tremec T5 transmission. A couple of components that you are going to need is a clutch pedal assembly. I was able to source all of my parts from the junkyard. I was able to find a mostly complete unit, so I only had to get all the parts from one vehicle. It was not wrecked. I'm sure it was in there either for the engine going bad, or could have been a minor accident and I just couldn't see all the damage on it. The whole front end was missing off of it. But basically there's the shifter assembly. That's got to come out before it will go in or out. There's only 4 bolts on top of that. Clutch pedal assembly. You need clutch cable, transmission. You need that transmission mount off of the T5 that was in it. You need that back, the bell housing adapter plate. And let's see, clutch, flywheel, pedal assembly, which I've already got mine installed. That was a decent fight. Yeah, that's an LED bar in there. And yeah, those pedals are pretty worn out. I'll need new covers for them, but for the low price of, I think I got out of there for $260 for everything that I needed from the junkyard. This was a pretty cheap build, or a pretty cheap swap. Hope this helps you guys out. I should be posting another video as the swap continues. Oh, you will also need the harness, the clutch cable, which, yeah, you should probably buy that brand new, but it works still. I mean, the car's got 140,000 miles on it, so it's not really a big issue that I'm using all used components. The only thing that I did end up buying brand new was a new rear main seal, which you can't reuse those, and a new pilot bearing, because the automatic does not have a pilot bearing in the back of the crank, which makes it easier for installation. Hope this helps you guys out, but this is basically where I'm at. I am doing this again on the floor.